Welcome back, everyone, to our weekly update. This week, we're going to try something new. Instead of, just highlighting some of the major changes, we're going to do a deep dive on one tool we think is just great.
And this week we're going to talk about NotebookLM, and this is something we've both used for quite a bit of time, but they just continue to make improvements, and it's really astonishing at how capable it is now. A little bit of background. This was released in July 2023 by Google Labs, and it's powered by Google's Gemini. So it has one of the best frontier large language models that's powering it. Google describes the Notebook LM as a virtual research assistant. And really, the way to think of it is that you're putting together a research notebook. You're able to collect a lot of materials, keep them in that notebook, and then be able to work on those research materials within that notebook. And they've added in a lot of tools so that you can really engage with the materials, analyze the materials, work with them in a bunch of ways. And one of the benefits of having it done that way is that by keeping all the materials in that notebook, you have far fewer hallucinations. When I was researching about this, there's a lower percentage of hallucinations, but there are really two distinctions. One is that there are fewer hallucinations, but there's also a matter of it being a different kind of hallucination. When we look at other chatbots and you think of ChatGPT or even Gemini Pro, when it has a hallucination, it might be making up a link or content for something because it's not really grounded in outside material. Within NotebookLM, the design, and typically what we found to be the case is that it's not going to make those kinds of hallucinations. It's not going to make up a source because it's drawing from those sources that you have in the notebook. Instead, the hallucination is more likely to be the type of maybe slightly misrepresenting, maybe overstating something that's in the source material or understating it, kind of in the way that we often find that we might do in our own research, where we don't quite fully represent something as it was if we're overexcited about it, or the way a student might when they're taking notes from a source and they have the basic idea right, but they don't fully capture it. Those are the kinds of hallucinations you find in NotebookLM. So certainly not to say that you shouldn't be double checking this. We still need to be checking for hallucinations, be able to look for any errors and mistakes. And for our students, we want to be able to underscore the importance of doing that. So that part of the research process still needs to be there. But this does change the nature of it so that you're able to get a lot better content based on the materials that you're including in here. This includes some shareable access controls so that within the notebook, and we'll show you how it works, you can share the entire notebook. You can collaborate with somebody else within the notebook and share complete control over that notebook, or even can share just certain access points, like just the chatbot, or you can download or share something like the audio or video overview. This does have a free version, as long as you have a Google account or some kind of a Google account, either attached to Gmail or otherwise. You do have the ability to be able to create some items in NotebookLM, but it does have some limits. And we'll talk about what those look like. And it's really easy to find. It's notebooklm.google.com.
Yeah, the only thing I would add here, briefly is, you described it as like a virtual research assistant. I actually think it can be described too as like a teaching assistant or a tutor. And I think some of that, that'll come out because, as you mentioned, it's not only is it available to everybody, but it's also available on schools, that have access to the free version of the Gemini that's been distributed. So, you could use it as a teaching assistant or a tutor on your own personal account, but there's a lot of tools within the school accounts that allow a lot of the sharing that you've talked about.
Yeah. That's right. So if we're looking at some of the features of NotebookLM, if you have the paid version, this is one that, for many of us who are paying $20 a month, and that might be to have the extended memory for our Google accounts that would include Gemini Pro. If you have the paid version, you can include up to 300 sources per notebook. If you have the free version, it's capped out at about 50. And that might change a little bit over time, but it definitely is a smaller bandwidth and smaller number of sources. As far as the kind of content you can include in the notebook, this can include YouTube transcripts, PDF files, web links, items from your own Google Drive, and we'll show you how you can pull those in, but lots of different kinds of content that you can include within that notebook. It's important to note for something like YouTube, though, that it is the transcript and it's not the actual video that's being pulled in. It's not multimodal. It's not pulling in the video. It's not pulling in the audio. So unless it's in the transcript, it's not going to be able to pull that in. Now, within the interface of NotebookLM, you have a number of different features there, including a chat interface, very similar to what you would find in a chatbot. You have the ability to write notes like you would in a notebook to be able to keep track of different ideas that you would have, or to be able to add a little content to the notebook or to specific sources that you might want to highlight. You can create audio or video overviews. There are mind maps, there are quizzes, there are reports, flashcards. It really runs the gamut, and there's a lot here to explore. And what's astonishing is that they keep expanding the capabilities and the controls over each one. So why don't we jump into NotebookLM, and this is what it looks like when you first log in, and you can look at your own notebooks, featured notebooks, and shared with me. And Stefan, why don't you say a little bit about some of these featured notebooks?
Some of the, featured notebooks, these are, built by other companies, right? So, the Atlantic, for example, they have stuff about how to build a life from Atlantic, right? Which just kind of brings in some common articles on those topics, right? We have our World in Data, which is just trends in health, wealth, and happiness, which, a lot of, a lot of troubles going on. So it's good to check in on, some of the good things that happenings. But parenting advice, these are secrets of the super agers, right? Who are using the Notebook LM. So, if you're a super ager and using Notebook LM, that's great. But it sets up and you can kind of click on these. The Economist, as you're showing here, they came out with this, I think just a couple months ago, or well, it was July 7th, 2025, and just kind of looking at the world ahead. And they uploaded a lot of their content related to that that you can see on the left.
And when you look at this, it's anytime you open one of the notebooks, it has the same layout. You have sources on the left, chat in the middle, and the studio on the right. And for the sources, what's great about this is it'll list all of the sources you have available here. And for each one, you can click on it and it'll actually open the document. So it's not that you only have access to what it was trained on, and you can't see that original source. Here, you can actually look at that source that's there. And you'll see that this will be really important when we get into the chat. So for any of these, you can open them up. You can select or deselect certain sources. If you wanted to have a chat about just this particular article, you can just have a chat about that by selecting that one, or select all, and you can have a chat about all of the content that's there.
And as you show, you're showing right there in the center. That's where you can have the chat. In terms of the text chat, we'll show you where there's an audio chat later, but you can have a text chat with the source materials right there. And I see it's like, yes, how will geopolitical tensions shape global economic, technological, and migration patterns? And it's going through there, and it's reading the content, and it generates an answer, right? And that delay shows you, right, that it is reading through there. And then note on the numbers, right, where you can click on the numbers, it shows you, right, the sources that it's pulling the information from. So again, that's something, sometimes you're just doing a general reading and every exact number you don't necessarily have to, proof to make sure it's accurate. As Anand was saying, you're going to get pretty high degree of accuracy in here and even resolve a lot of the traditional hallucinations. But if you want to be sure that, that number, that factoid is absolutely correct, you can click right on the document and confirm it.
And this is a great exercise with students to be able to show that they can verify the fact. They can see where it's found in the article. And it's not just that it shows you which article, but you can see it highlights exactly where you can find that. So for this one, world GBT projected to grow by just 2.5%. It highlights it here, and you can see world GDP will grow by just 2.5%. Now, it's not always going to be just a little factoid like that. And there are often multiple sources here. So, like this one talking about challenges to China's innovators and threaten global growth could be in source 5, and you see this section, or in source 6, 7, or 8. And you can click on it and see the article pull up with the quote, or you can just hover over it and you can see that material that's being highlighted and that it's drawing from, and it shows you the title. So it's a great way to interact with the content while it's giving you a lot of that answer that you might have in the chat. You can ask your own question. It includes some sample questions at the bottom. It's a great way, very similar to what you would see with a lot of other chatbots in terms of kind of traditional interactions. Now, then we move into the studio, and this is where it gets really exciting. I'm going to start with one that I think is a really fantastic tool to use with students when you're working on a group project, thinking about brainstorming, thinking about researching, and that is the mind map. And what it does is it really takes over all of the content, and then it develops this set of topics and subtopics.
Yeah, and it'll just keep going. It'll just expanding, right? So it's like you look at geopolitics in the global order, but what are, some of the big issues impacting that? Trump's second term, right? It really changed after World War II, we had the kind of the international dynamics of the treaties and the UN, and that changed that. There's a lot of new international conflicts, such as the one in the Ukraine, right? And then, okay, well, what are some of the, how is that playing out? Well, Trump's second term with the tariffs is impacting, the economy. It's impacting deterrence. Is he going to support NATO? Or are we going to shift the domestic policy priorities? So, you really kind of see it's pulling those concepts. This is one of the great things about natural language processing and semantic searching. It's really kind of able to pull out those concepts and develop a mind map.
And as you can see, when I clicked on one, then it starts opening up in the chat all of the content related to that. Discuss the sources say about impact on global economy and the larger context of Donald Trump's second term. So for a student that's really trying to explore some different subtopics, thinking about a research project, to be able to put a lot of content here and to be able to explore it in different ways is a little more active than just having a chat by tell them here's what you should work on. This gives them a chance to explore it a little bit, to see some of the connections between them. And for each one, again, you can hover over it or click on the link and you'll be able to see the source with the article and the direct quote that supports it. And you can always come back to this, open up the mind map again, and then be able to look at different areas. And you don't have to even just click on it when it gets down to this point. I could just click on geopolitics and global order, and it'll do the same thing within the chat for that item. So that's one that is incredibly useful. Then you can always create documents, briefing documents. And so this has one. It's a briefing document on the Global Outlook 2025 key themes and forecasts. And you'll see that I put together this brief about a lot of the content drawing from those articles. And that's useful too. But then we get into some of the other features, such as the video overview and the audio overview. And we'll show you some examples of it here. And then when we get into another notebook, we'll be able to see how you construct one of these.
And it's generating this, all on its own, including the
Welcome to
including the visual, including the visuals.
the explainer. As we make our way through 2025, it's turning out to be a year just full of contradictions. So today, from their World Ahead 2025 special issue, and what a year it is. A year where incredible.
So you'll see it creates a series of slides, static visuals, and it has that audio overview. But it's a really great way to be able to demonstrate and show some of the visual representations of the data that you might have. And when we get into it with another notebook, you'll see that there's a lot that you can do to be able to change this. This is useful. And within your own notebook, you'd even be able to, here you can see you can download it. So you can have this offline or to be able to use it elsewhere, maybe to share with students. Now let's look at one of the audio overviews. This is one of the first features they had and became very popular early on.
Yeah, and it really what you're going to hear is two podcasters, AI podcasters discussing the topic, right? And
Feels like the future arrives before you've even finished your coffee sometimes. Well, welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take that stack of sources you have and really unpack the important stuff, the key insights. Today, we are diving deep into the world ahead 2025.
And I found, the one thing, and we'll show you how to make a notebook. If you really want to see the power of this, take something you wrote yourself, right? Whether it's a published article or just a paper, really anything, and you can upload it right into there, and you'll see that it's really accurate. That the two podcasters really focus on what you probably consider the key issues in whatever your writing is, and they really unpack those in terms of the explanation that's provided. The discuss like, oh, well, maybe this wasn't clear, or what do you think about this? Just is the same as anybody else reading the article.
Now here I opened up another notebook that I've created, and I wanted to demonstrate a couple of other things that are available here. One of the newer ones is within the audio overview. You could either just get the traditional audio overview.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're pulling.
But even better, if you click on the new interactive mode, it gives you a chance to listen to the audio overview and then interact with it and ask it questions. You'll see that the interface looks a little different because you can't jump ahead in the stream because it's ready to be responsive and be interactive.
Today we're pulling the thread on, well, the single biggest shockwave currently ripping through universities and colleges everywhere.
You mean generative AI?
Exactly. The massive and often pretty messy integration of generative AI. We want to zoom in on what this actually means for things like academic integrity.
Oh, hey, I think our listeners got something to say.
Yeah, I have a question. If I'm getting ready to teach a class and I want to have a policy about AI, what kind of AI policy could I put on my syllabus?
That is a fantastic and extremely timely question, and you are absolutely not alone in asking it.
Okay, let's unpack this for our listener. When we talk about AI policy for a syllabus, you have basically three core options.
You can go for the ban, the full allowance, or the kind of nuanced conditional use policy.
Right. And what we're seeing in
So what's great about this is that not only do you have their overview, but you can interrupt and ask a question. And every time I've tried this, they have a pretty good response. It doesn't take all that long for the response. And for students, think about how this interactive feature makes it a little more active for them. They're able to then really kind of take some ownership over the process.
Yeah, and the one thing I would highlight here, you said it's really fast, and the one thing I started using it this summer, and there was like a good bit of delay, not too long, but now we want everything instantly now, right? So you'd have to wait like 10 or 15 seconds. Now, like as you saw or heard, I guess I should say, it was just a few seconds. And this is great too because obviously a lot of people are thinking through these policies and they want to develop them. Imagine, you had the paid account and you uploaded like 300 policies. Well, you don't have time to read them all, right? But you could ask the podcasters, like, well, what are some of the common themes in the policies, or what's a unique idea, or what's something I should be paying attention to? Because they've essentially read all that, and it's a build out. Really, we showed you earlier how you could text chat with it, right? And it's basically the same idea, except now you're using the audio and you're having a conversation with it just like you would have with a person.
Now, I also wanted to demonstrate that there are different ways of having it build out the visual overview. And when we build a new notebook in a minute, you'll see how you can actually design this. But in this case, I had it use a different kind of style so that it's like paper art. So you can design it differently, some different visual aspects, which is a nice feature. A couple of other things quickly to show you here, and this is particularly helpful for students. You could have it create flashcards. And so it'll create some flashcards on the materials within this. In this case, why did OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, shut down its own AI detection software? Stefan, do you know why?
Because it wasn't accurate, and it tends to discriminate against people who have more simple writing patterns, such as English language learners. So yes, that's important for everyone in
Yep.
education to
So
understand.
yeah, I was going to say, you can see that. It's the right answer. Stefan got it right. But what's great here is then it has the explain function. So if a student
Yeah.
gets it and they don't get the answer right with the flashcard, they can hit explain and it's going to come up and give them an explanation and tie it back into the source. So I can look at it and see, okay, where is this? Yeah, it says in response to this, they try to develop this. OpenAI even shut their own AI detection software down because of its poor accuracy. So that it's grounded in the content so that if they have the research, if they have the articles, they can make sure that it aligns with that. So the flashcards work really well. There's also a quiz. So you can have it generate a quiz. In this case, you have this, and let's just say I click on it. No, not quite. It gives the answer and it explains it. So then they can move on to the next question. And you could also click on explain to be able to get more information about that question and understand the content a little bit better as a result.
Yeah, I know my own son. He's a college student, and he said he uses this to help him prepare for his quizzes. So it's a great way. We always say, oh well, the students aren't going to learn it. It's like they're probably learning more, right? Than because I know I didn't take too many practice quizzes. I didn't write out my own practice quizzes and then take the quiz before I had the exam. Now, if somebody had just emailed me a practice quiz, that would have been the closest to it in our day. I may have done that, but here they're right there.
So let's try creating a new notebook and we'll show you how you can use some of these features, incorporate some new sources. As soon as you click on create a new notebook, you get this overview, adding sources. You can upload files, but you can also add things like a website, a YouTube video, copy text, or incorporate something from your Google Drive. So let's try this out. Let's go to our podcast website. You can see that now we're available on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. But I just want to highlight that web source, the web URL, and I'm going to go and click on website. I can paste the URL here and insert it. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to read the website and it'll start coming through and putting the content up. It didn't have, because everything we have there is based on actually visuals, it didn't have anything to draw from. So let's try a different one. If I go to the Center for AI and the Liberal Arts at my university, and I'll click on that one and I'll add it in. Now, let me see if I add a website. This one has a lot of just readable text. And so it's going to have the text there. And you can see I can click here, see exactly what's listed, includes everything, all the text from that website. So you can look through it. So that's one thing you can do. You can also add YouTube videos. So let me go to this YouTube episode that we had with Francois, and I'm going to share it to get the link. And now if I go in here, I can paste the YouTube URL and I'll insert that, and it's going to pull in the transcript that we had. Now, the other thing you can do with this is add discover, and you can discover sources. You can have it find sources from the web or from Google Drive. I'm going to start from the web, and I'm just going to say AI and higher education with a focus on the liberal arts. And when you do this, it'll pull up to 10 sources currently. And this is something we'll talk a little bit about in terms of its future capabilities and what they're forecasting. But for now, it'll be able to pull in a number of sources, and I can decide which of these I'd like to keep. I can always open it up to view one of them. I'm going to import all 10. So now it puts those in the notebook. The other thing that's really great about this is with Discover, I can do a search within my Google Drive. So I'm going to do something like AI and the liberal arts, and it's only going to search for documents from my Google Drive because I have that connected with this account. When I do submit, it'll pull in those sources. So if I have a lot of materials that I've been working on personally, then I can pull those in and use the notebook to be able to analyze, to be able to summarize and work through this. And I'll import these too. So I have all of these documents. Now we have YouTube videos, PDFs, websites, Google Drive documents, lots of materials here that we can draw from. You can click on mind map, you can click on flashcards, quizzes, all of this is great. But let's look at what you can do with an audio overview now. It used to be that you would just click on audio overview, it would create a general overview and it would decide what to include. But now it allows for a lot of other functionality.
Yeah, you can basically add some instructions, right? What should the AI host focus on in this in this episode? So, you could talk about bias, right? And the type of maybe research resources that are people use. You can talk about academic integrity. You could talk about writing integrity. You could really focus it on, the Mary Washington Center for AI and the liberal arts, and all the benefits of that, and why you should attend Mary Washington, right? So, but the point is, you can get the podcasters, because now too, when you're uploading 300 documents, potentially, or even 50, they may cover like a lot of different areas within a subject and within a subject. So I like the durable skills one. We've been talking about that and promoting that a lot. So that's a good place to focus it there. And then, what do you want it to be? Do you want to, you want to have the debate, right? You want to talk about it. You can. The one other thing, most of our listeners are using English, but there's a lot of other languages that this is available in. A
I think
lot.
it's like 80 languages at this point that
Yeah, and I think it'll
available.
expand. They don't. I saw Meta. I'll sneak in an update. Yeah, Meta yesterday released something to 1,600 languages, and I'm sure that'll come to Google eventually as well. So you're probably going to be able to eventually generate these in any language in the world.
Now, I'm having that generate. It'll take a few minutes because it's having to go through and analyze all the content, prepare it in the way that I've asked it to prepare it, and then generate the audio, and then prepare it as the audio overview. Now, I'm going to have it work on a video overview too, and it can do an explainer, you can do a brief video. They've added different visual styles, so you can do it with the classic, whiteboard, kawaii, anime, watercolor, heritage, retro print, papercraft, lots of different styles that you might include here. Let's just do a retro print. And for this one, I want to have it focus on, let's say, syllabus policies for AI use. And I'll have that generate too. So it'll take a little while for it to generate, but you can have that work on it. While we look at that, let's see what you can do with reports, because this is something they've expanded quite a bit too. You can, in the chat, ask it questions, have it generate some content. But in this case, they've built in some of the basic system prompts to be able to do different things. If you want a study guide, for instance, we'll click on that and you'll see that it already includes this part of the prompt that you can change. You can update it. So instead of a quiz with 10 answers, maybe I want 20 short answer questions, or I want a different, I don't want the answer key if I want to be able to generate it that way. Let's go back and you can look at something like a briefing document or a research proposal. And here you might be able to say, draw from these documents and be able to develop a research proposal to work on a new center for AI and liberal arts at my institution. And maybe that's something that would be able to generate. So for each of these, it gives you a lot of granular control over what you'd like it to create, what direction it should be taking. And again, you can choose the language, which is a really wonderful addition.
And the other thing, it showed blog posts there. The one thing I wanted to just comment on when you upload the sources, you either have to upload a Google Doc or a PDF. It won't let you upload a Microsoft Word document. So if you have a Microsoft Word document, you either kind of upload it into your Google Drive and convert it to a Google Doc, or save it as a PDF. They're not playing friendly with Microsoft.
So this will take a little while for it to go through, and we'll be able to come back to it. And you can always leave that notebook and come to it again. Let's go back over here and see if there's anything else we wanted to add along these lines. I think that when you think about some of these different features, let's start talking about some use cases and what you might be able to do with it. And I have a few of them on this slide that we can reference. When we think about for instructors, certainly to prepare a course and delivery, if you have a lot of assignments already that you're using and you're putting a syllabus together, imagine putting copies of those different assignments into a notebook and then asking for help in crafting that syllabus, maybe the learning objectives or the way that you would develop the formula for final assignments or the order that you might have. This is a great way to be able to put content together and use the chatbot to be able to talk about that content and be able to get feedback about that content. So for developing a course, preparing a course, I think it's a really useful tool.
Yeah, and of course, there's the interactive, teaching tools. People can interact with it. Building out a literature review. Some of those sources, right? You can upload there, and you can ask it to generate a literature review, as well as to connect to some of those other web resources. As you were alluding to, it appears it's not quite in the notebook yet, but that you're going to be able to add a deep research capability to do some additional academic research to grab some additional articles.
Yep. Collaborative research projects. I think this is an excellent tool for that. We're going to show in just a minute some of the sharing functions so that you could open up a notebook and then share it with another person. And I'll take one of the new ones and I'll share it with Stefan. You'll see that we each then have access to all of the source documents. We can add or change those source documents, delete them, but we have access to all of the items in the studio, any notes that we might have. And for a group project, for a group of students working together as a research project tool, I think that this really hard to find one that has the same capabilities, and they're able to do this in a way that's very active. And then finally, accessibility. I think that it's not going to address all of the accessibility challenges that we have, but if you're thinking about a student for whom they're visually impaired, you can create the audio overviews. If you want something that includes visuals that is able to, help them with somebody that's more visually attuned, that's useful. Changing it to another language is helpful. Developing it in other kinds of content and making it more accessible in different ways. Remember, for each of these different items in the studio, you can have it designed to produce it in a particular way. And in a notebook, you don't have to, or you aren't limited to just one audio overview. You can create one that's on a specific subsection, maybe another one that is geared toward an overview to prepare for a quiz or a test, or maybe another one that's prepared for re-explaining a complex idea for somebody that's having trouble with the readings. So you can prepare each of these with very specific controls over what you'd like it to include and what you'd be able to use it for.
Yeah, the one thing I would add on there, I know some teachers, like you say, okay, well, you want to think about like how you're going to build your notebooks, right? So you could say, well, I'm going to build a notebook for my course and just put everything in there, right? But it makes, in a college course, you say, well, I'm going to kind of break it down like by, content area, in your international relations class, maybe you're going to focus on, the theory of realism for, part of the course. So you would upload all the content there. I know some teachers, they actually do one for each lesson or set of related lessons, because then you can add things. Say a student's absent or whatever, they have that, or even if they're there, they have it as reinforcement. The other creative use I'd add, some people have different levels of comfort with this, but some professors have started recording their lectures or their class discussions. And if it's a discussion, you probably want to check with your students before you upload it into the notebook. But if it's just your lecture, you could upload a transcript of your lecture right into there, right? And they could not only see the transcript of the lecture if they missed the class, but you could see that or they could read, or how you were they could read what you were saying. They could see as all of one group. Maybe your lecture on realism that was like, supported by the class readings, and all this would kind of get integrated together.
So a couple of other things I wanted to show you. You can add a note, and I just copied text from the chat, but you could have any kind of note that you want to include here. And it might be that you're reading through, let's say, this document from University of Florida, and you have some notes that you've taken here. You can include this as a note, and then when you have it, that note will show up as an item over here in the studio. You can also then convert that to a source. So you can convert that in, and that now becomes an item in the source so that it draws from that when it's answering something in this chat or within one of the items for the studio. Now, remember, if you're creating something like an audio overview after you have 10 sources, and then you've created that audio overview, and then you add five more sources, that audio overview is not going to update with those new sources. That's something that's fairly static. It's already been created once, but you could always create a new audio overview to update it. So that's something to keep in mind. What I like about the note is that you can just copy in text from anything or include your own notes that you would include in a notebook, in a research notebook. And that becomes part of the ongoing discussion that you have here. Now, there's another item that we started, and this was the audio overview, and it was a debate format about AI versus human cognition. Before I play that, I want to show you what you can do with these three dots over here. You can rename it, you can download it, and this is a way to be able to download it and share it, send it to somebody else. You can view the custom prompt, and this is something a student might be able to see if you share this within the notebook. But you can also delete it, or you can share this particular item. And so when this opens up, I can see who I can add this to. I can have a welcome note for when they first open it up. I can restrict it to only people that have the access, or I can make it available to anyone with a link. It's a lot like the same shareable controls that you have for any other Google document. So it gives you a lot of, it's a very easy interface because it's something we're mostly familiar with already. So you can do this for particular items, or you can also do this for the entire notebook. So in this case, I'm going to share it with Stefan. And so I can make him only a viewer, or I can have him as an editor. And if I make him an editor, then this becomes a collaborative notebook where he has access to everything else that I have access to. And then once I send it to him, he'll be able to get in here and to be able to make changes to it, to be able to access items in the studio as well. Now let's look at this audio overview.
To the debate. Today, we're wrestling with uh, really a core conflict in modern higher education. How should institutions prepare students for the AI world? Should we, dive headfirst into rapid AI integration, seeing it as essential enablement for the future workforce, or should we maybe hold back intentionally?
So, not going to play the whole thing right now. If you're interested, I'd be happy to share it with you. Just drop us a line. A couple of things that are interesting about this. You'll notice that the audio overviews, they've incorporated pauses, a little bit of filler words, just to increase your comfort level as you're listening to it. And we found this in a lot of other video voice controls of other chatbots. Google has done an excellent job of this. And so it comes across as very realistic. I remember some of the first times I shared audio overviews with colleagues, and they thought it was an actual podcast recorded by people because it just sounded so lifelike. But it's also interesting to see that you can have specific applications for that audio overview. In this case, a debate about a specific subsection or a subtopic that you might have, and I could create more of them going forward. It does take a little time. You can see the video overview is still being developed, but then you have that and you can share it and you'll be able to do a lot with it.
And that's just something that workflow that, I still sometimes pause, when AI is working, right, to build these audio files, videos, anything else. Sometimes a deep research run might take an AI like 20 minutes. You can do other things. And, we did for a while, right? But that, just kind of as a general tip about using AI, you can proceed ahead while it's working.
Yep. So that really covers most of what we have here. There are some other features here, including analytics. If you make one public and you want to share it, you can find out a little bit more. In this case, no analytics yet because you need to have several other users. But if you have a notebook and you make it public, I would say make it so it's only viewable by others. But I can imagine sharing this with a classroom full of students, letting them play around with it. And then you would have, with the analytics button, access to find out what they're using, how often they're using it, and maybe even length of time. And you can explore some of that a little bit. There's some other settings here too that you can control, including feedback, output language, device, managing the subscription, and there is a NotebookLM mobile app that you can find on your iPhone or your Android device so that you can access a lot of this there, and it's in sync with one another. So if you create it on the desktop, you'll be able to open up the app and you'll be able to find it on your mobile device as well.
That reminds me of a couple creative uses. I showed this to some students this summer, and one, younger students, they were in middle school, and one of them said, "Oh, well, when I go for a run, I'll listen to the podcast, right? Like I'm gonna upload some of my schoolwork there, things we need to do. And then she said also like when I'm on the bus to school in the morning, I can listen to this as a review before the test. You can think about you using it in the gym. A lot of us listen to podcasts when we're driving. That's another opportunity. And of course, you can engage in a conversation about it. So I wanted to highlight a couple of those uses. The other thing, there's this constant discussion about, AI and, we're not going to think anymore and, quote unquote brain rot. And, if you just kind of really think back about some of the stuff we've been talking about, right? Like the mind map, right? One of the first things we introduced and how it kind of opens up like all the relationships of those contents and gets you to think about that and then pulls it back to the original source and verifying the information, thinking about ideas that the podcasters bring up, and that probably triggers some ideas in your mind, and then kind of jumping in on the conversation with the interactive tools, being able to share this right now for a group project, and that everybody contributes to, and you're getting. Maybe we have to go so far as a giant brain, but you're getting kind of different ideas from people and you're interacting with it. It's very, there's some things it's producing, right? So that you don't have to produce it anymore. It can help you kind of generate the literature review, but then it also is like, well, I can build on that pretty quickly. And I think it's if you use it as dynamically how it's intended, then I think it's really going to increase your thinking and of course your ability to learn content with things such as the flashcards and the quizzes.
Yeah, I like that distinction. It's not just about consuming content that's being produced by a chatbot. It's a little bit more active. Of course, you could still just create audio overviews, video overviews, but the interactive feature allowing you to be able to explore different applications, thinking about what you would do with the content, that is a real feature for me. And that's something that I really like for the students. This is a platform that does that better than many others. The second thing I really like about it is that with NotebookLM, you're able to get responses and content that hews very closely to the source materials, and that doesn't always happen. So it doesn't get rid of all hallucinations. It's a different kind of hallucination, and we should always verify that and reinforce that for students. But it is going to be a lot closer, and it gives them an easy way to be able to double check whether or not that content really says what that chat says it says, and you can verify very easily. And it's good for them to get used to that. It's a good habit, and it's a much easier way for them to be able to get into that habit. Now, there's one other feature about this, and they're always developing new use cases, new features, different applications for this. And so I wouldn't be surprised if this next item is available for more people than it is right now. You could see when I was doing the search that I could do a search, for instance, on the web to discover material. It would give me 10 articles. But there's some reports that they're starting to incorporate another function into this that's far more expansive.
Yeah, it's called Deep Research, and Deep Research has been available at least to paid subscribers. Sometimes you even get a few if you're not a paid subscriber. For example, on ChatGPT, I think you get 5 a month or something like that. And basically, the difference between, Honest showed like a standard web search where it went out and it grabbed, I think it was 5 sources, but a deep researcher on a paid account will spend about 20 minutes, sometimes longer. I've seen it spend as long as an hour doing what they just call deep research to go look through academic sources, publications from reputable journals that are available online, in non-licensed databases, reports, think types reports, government reports, all the type of stuff that you would consider to be a very strong source, and it'll go out and it'll do the research, and I'm sure it'll give you like a list, a much more comprehensive list of things that you can add, and I'm sure it'll allow you to check off, to do your human review before you decide which of those you want to add to your chatbot or to your Notebook LM chatbot, I guess I'll call it.
But given that it's based on Google Gemini and that Gemini has deep research capabilities, it's all the same company, of course. Being able to incorporate that would really turbocharge what you could do with a notebook, because then it's not just the second step of collecting materials on your own and incorporating it into the notebook. This would help you find those excellent original sources, those primary sources you would like to include within your notebook. That deep research capability would really change what you could do with NotebookLM. I think the only problem people will have is that it's going to find a lot more than 50 sources. And so the free version is going to be more challenging, at least probably a little more frustrating for people that want to include more than 50. But I think we'll probably find that pretty soon. The other thing that's interesting about this is that I've also read reports that they've started to offer audio overviews that you would find in NotebookLM in other Google products, such as Google Docs. So you'll find this kind of permeating back and forth where you're taking some features from one, you'll find it in others. But even that said, it's remarkable that Google, given how big it is, it's probably not that surprising, but you have this distinct platform that does a very different type of use case and set of applications that you don't find on Google Gemini. It's almost like two different companies. But what's nice about it is that they've been able to really take it to a lot of different directions to be able to fine tune some of those options, giving you a lot more granular control. And I think there's a great deal of potential with NotebookLM just as it currently is. And as it continues to develop, I think you're going to find other use cases and other ideas too. So this concludes our deep dive on NotebookLM. We would love to hear about your use cases, your ideas, suggestions. Please put them in the comments for this video so others can learn from them if you have other suggestions and ideas, or send them to us. And if you have ideas about other AI tools you'd like to see us do a deep dive on, please let us know. We'd be happy to include those in future weeks.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.